Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Export TT Limited's pre-mission seminar and launch of the Guyana Trade Mission. The goal of this morning's session is to demystify the architecture, construction, and engineering industry in Guyana. Before we proceed, a small matter of housekeeping. Due to our proximity to the Port of Spain General Hospital, we may be interrupted from time to time by sirens. Please do not be alarmed. It's just life here. Also, please ensure that your login name includes your first and last name as well as the company you represent, because there will be a few single question polls throughout the morning session that will allow us to clearly identify your responses for any follow-up action that may need to be taken. Now, thank you all for being with us this morning. I wish you an enjoyable and stimulating session. Now, I will shortly hand you over to Export TT Limited's acting GM, who will officially open this morning's session. But first, let me tell you a little bit about our fearless leader. Mr. Dhanraj Hariprasad is the acting general manager of Export TT Limited. He has been a manager at Export TT for almost 7 years, and during his tenure, he has managed the varied portfolios of research, monitoring and evaluation, and export promotions. In his parallel role as manager of monitoring and research, he monitors the company's advancements toward its goal while evaluating the effectiveness of the projects and programs designed to contribute to it. Mr. Hariprasad, I hand over to you.
Thank you, Mandisa. Dr. Vishnu Durga, Chairman, Action Invest Caribbean Incorporated. Ms. Mandy Mickle, Head of Operations, Public Procurement Commission of Guyana. Mr. Patrick Henry, Director, Center for Local Business Development. Mr. Martin Job, President, Trinidad and Tobago Institute of Architects. Ms. Celine Bridgelal, Treasurer, Civil Division, Association of Professional Engineers of Trinidad and Tobago. Good morning and welcome to everyone in attendance. I'm pleased to welcome you to Export TT's pre-mission seminar and launch titled Demystifying the Architecture, Construction and Engineering Industry in Guyana. Over the past few months, we have focused our efforts on engaging with various stakeholders in architecture, engineering, and construction towards advancing the interests of the industry in external markets. Through various surveys and meetings, we have dedicated our efforts to better understanding where you want to go and how we can help you to get there. In 2019, Guyana was a top export market selected by service providers within the industry and continues to hold much intrigue and promise for our exporters. Since ExxonMobil's discovery in 2015, Guyana's growth trajectory has skyrocketed, with many labeling it as the Dubai of the Caribbean. In a recent report by the Oxford Business Group, GDP growth was projected at 86% in 2020, and even in the wake of the current global pandemic, that rapid growth trajectory has showed no indication of slowing down. With the projected boom in foreign direct investment and the associated high demand for infrastructure to support the growth in the oil and gas industry, we believe that this market will hold much promise now and in many years to come. We also understand that many of you have dedicated time and resources over the past 3 to 4 years penetrating the Guyanese market. Some of you would have set up offices, registered businesses, and perhaps even engaged in strategic partnerships with local firms. Some of you may still not know where to begin. Through this session, we hope to address some of these burning questions that some of you may have about doing business in Guyana. What are the legal and regulatory requirements for professionals in Guyana? What are the procurement and tendering processes like, and how do I keep updated on new opportunities in the market? What are the upcoming projects and opportunities in Guyana in 2021 and beyond? We want to take this time to especially acknowledge the executive of Trinidad and Tobago Institute of Architecture, the Trinidad and Tobago Contractors Association, and the Association of Professional Engineers of Trinidad and Tobago for engaging with us over the past few months and giving us critical feedback through our various discussions. Much of what you have shared with us has been incorporated in the rich content which participants will benefit from today and the future targeted efforts we have planned for the sector. This is just the beginning. I want to welcome our esteemed panel of speakers and presenters, and on behalf of Export TT's Board of Directors, management and staff, I welcome you to our pre-mission session and launch of Export TT's trade mission to Guyana for architecture, engineering, and construction services. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hari Prasad, for your words of welcome and for charting the course of this morning's seminar and launch. Now, before we begin this morning's presentations, please respond to our brief poll that will appear on your screen shortly, asking you where you are in your export journey. Please take a minute to select the option that reflects your company status. We'll just give 30 more seconds for all the, I see responses are still coming in. Just give you a few more seconds before we close the poll. Thank you so much for participating. Okay, I think we will close it there. Thank you so much for your participation. Oh, no, we're getting some more responses. All right, I think we'll close it off there. Thank you so much, everyone. Hold a moment. There we go. Oh, should we? Okay. All right, thank you so much. Now we will begin in earnest with an overview of the architecture, construction, and engineering services in Guyana by Dr. Vishnu Durga, Chairman of Action Invest Caribbean Incorporated. Now, Dr. Vishnu Durga is Executive Chairman of Action Invest Caribbean Incorporated and a certified action coach, and holds a PhD in management, specializing in entrepreneurship, as well as an MBA and engineering qualifications. As past president, chairman, and councillor of several BSOs, including the Georgetown Chamber, Go Invest, and the Bureau of Standards, Vishnu has over 20 years of private sector development service. He is very passionate about personal, professional, and organizational development, and pursues this passion via the numerous organizations that he supports. Dr. Durga, over to you.
Thank you very much, and good morning as well to everyone who is attending this morning. As you can note from the bit of an overview on my presentation, it will be a very practical perspective. I have been serving mainly in the private sector as a business person for the past 20 years in Guyana, having also served in excess of 18 years with various private sector organizations, including and even public organizations such as the Bureau of Standards and Go Invest. We are also the publisher of the Who's Who in Guyana business directory, which also allows us significant access into the way the private sector operates in Guyana. And I'm backed by a very result-driven team here in Guyana who's been able to make quite a bit of this research possible as well. Now, just the overview as I start off with the presentation. I think the key factors here to look at is that Guyana does have 10 regions, and I'll show you very shortly what the population spread looks like. But another key factor is that our unemployment rate is still hovering at around 11%, which is about 30,000 odd persons who are currently listed as being unemployed. The many training facilities and training initiatives by the government, including removing corporate tax on educational facilities, retroactive to January 1st, 2020, are geared at upskilling our people as well, so that we can really have a sufficient, especially in this short term, workforce to participate in the developing economy. Now, we are 83,000 square miles, of which a very narrow strip, if you can see on my screen here, between Georgetown to New Amsterdam, or on the border with Suriname, is heavily populated. 85% of our population lives on a very narrow strip on the coastline. And just in Georgetown, within 50 kilometers of Georgetown, 1/3 of the population is concentrated there. You can see the breakdown here as well. Region 4, 311,000 people. So it's a bit more than 1/3 of our population is really concentrated in one specific region. And this would be very interesting for people to determine where they need to place their head offices or where the bulk of the activity is going to be located. I can tell you that the current shore base, Exxon's head office, the seat of government is all located in Georgetown. And from a real estate perspective, the demand keeps going up in Georgetown. Just about a week ago, we had a visit from a delegation from Dubai. And this video here that I'm about to play was actually presented to give a good overview of the type of infrastructural work that is expected to really start happening in Guyana over the coming years. So I would like you to take a view of this particular presentation.
Guyana's infrastructural landscape is set to undergo a radical shift as the government seeks to implement its ambitious development agenda. This is reflected in projects that impact air and land transport, as well as river and ocean development. First up is the upgrade of the Lethem Aerodrome to a regional airport. This project has been initiated to take advantage of the demand for international travel and trade with Brazil, Suriname, and the Caribbean. It also seeks to boost business and ecotourism in the Rupununi. Government will also be upgrading the 120 airstrips across the country, which will enable ease of travel, greater access to services, and support the tourism, trade, and health sectors. Over to land transport, the government's main objective is to link the hinterland with the coastland via a robust road network. A major land project is the establishment of the East Bank East Coast Demerara Road linkage. The feasibility study has been executed with Phase 1 expected to stretch from Ogle to Higgs Bosch Eccles. Phase 2 will link Eccles to Diamond, and Phase 3 will link Guyana's two international airports, namely the Chedi Jagan and Eugene F. Correa International Airports. This opens lands for the establishment of major hotels along these links. Plans are afoot to construct a new Demerara Harbour Bridge. To achieve this, the administration has asked for expressions of interest for companies both locally and internationally. The bridge will stretch from Lagrange to Nandi Park. It will be a fixed high-span bridge featuring 4 lanes of traffic. The new bridge will feature 6.6 kilometers of additional road links to be provided mainly to the western banks of the Demerara River to connect the road network. A new 4-lane highway on the west bank of Demerara will stretch from the new harbour bridge to Perico on the east bank of Essequibo. It is anticipated to open thousands of acres of land for agriculture, light manufacturing, tourism, and housing developments. The 4-lane highway will make way for the construction of another road from Perico to Bartica, Region 7. The 56-kilometer road will run from the Ponte east bank of Essequibo through Monkey Jump before ending at Bartica by way of a 700-meter bridge across the Essequibo River. At Goshen, a roadway will also be constructed to free and easy on the west bank of Demerara, creating an alternative route to the existing roadway from the Demerara Harbour Bridge to Perico. This road will link Region 3 to Region 7 and will support the mining, forestry, and tourism sectors. The Linden-Lethem Road, which is 454 kilometers of unpaved gravel road, will be transformed to an all-weather surface and include the reconstruction of all the bridges to international standards. This will create massive opportunities to move container cargo from the landlocked northern states of Brazil. It will also see the opening of thousands of acres of undeveloped lands of massive agro-processing and non-traditional crops such as soya and corn. Overland links to eco-ranches and pristine rainforests to propel our exploding tourism economy will also be created. The possibility of a railway parallel to the corridor is also being explored. Additionally, the Soesdijk-Linden Highway, which links Georgetown with the mining town of Linden, will be upgraded. Settlements are strong along both sides of the road, and this improvement will facilitate internal trade among communities and faster communication. Other major road linkages will be the Linden to Kokwani Road upgrade and the Kokwani to Oriala Road link, with a project spanning 105 kilometers and 90 kilometers respectively. This will create opportunities for quarrying, mining, plantation agriculture, and forestry. The Kurupakari Bridge is also part of the Linden-Mabura Development Package. It is envisioned to be an elevated, long-span concrete bridge which will complete connectivity by bridging our main waterways. It replaces a pontoon with uninterrupted travel for persons between regions 9 and 10 and even further into Brazil. The bridge is a key element along the corridor to support the movement of cargo from Brazil to our intended deep water port in Region 6. Meanwhile, the Amaila Road will be resuscitated to facilitate the 165 megawatt hydropower plant. Also on the cards is the construction of a new bridge at Wismar-Linden. The feasibility study and detailed designs are done, and this precast concrete girder two-lane bridge will span 220 meters with 500 meters of road approaches that connect the bridge to the Soestdijk-Linden Highway and the Linden-Lethem Road. The East Coast Demerara Railway Embankment Road is another thoroughfare set for major upgrades spanning 18.5 kilometers from Sherry Street to Enmore. This roadway will serve as an alternative route to the east coast of Demerara. The project seeks to achieve structural enhancements of the road to support heavy-duty vehicles, improve pavement condition, road safety, and performance of key junctions. On the main road, the highway is to be further extended from Belfield to Rosignol, West Berbice. Consultations are ongoing for the final design of the Quarantine River Bridge. A flat bridge will lead from Guyana to Long Island, where a road will be built to connect to the Surinamese side, which will feature a high-span bridge to allow for maritime traffic. This project will unlock a host of economic possibilities between Guyana and Suriname. The proposed site will provide a platform for free trade between the countries. On the cards for river and ocean development are the construction of a new stellene at Parika and the construction of a deep water port in Region 6. Phased development of the Parika stellene enables continued operation during construction and includes a terminal building, vehicle marshalling shelter, and a commercial building. The deep water port in Region 6 will connect to the Linden-Lethem Road and will facilitate international shipping. Additionally, the dredging of the Demerara River Channel will enable larger ocean-going vessels to enter Port Georgetown and support the shore-based activities of the oil and gas sector. There are also plans to modernize the fleet of ferry vessels to reduce travel time and boost trade. The government's infrastructural development plan is aimed at facilitating the growth of Guyana's green and blue economies.
Right. So in this particular video, especially with the advancements made on the Suriname-Guyana bridge, we can even say that today our president is in Suriname, and there have been some announcements about moving that project along. Many of these projects have been spoken about for decades. However, it is highly likely that they will unfold in the next 1 to 5 years. The opportunity to actually participate in such projects will go through a procurement process, and we have Ms. Mickle here who will take us through that particular process, and there has also been a move towards a call for proposals. So that's also something to keep an eye on. We can see a little bit of a snapshot here between where Guyana was on the Doing Business Index between 2018 to 2020. And one item of particular note here is dealing with construction permits, given the audience here. And we can see that it's still somewhere that, we were ranked at 163 and now at 167, where there is still a significant room for improvement in the way we deal with construction in Guyana. And as compared to Trinidad, what you are used to, you are at 119 and you're currently at 126 when it comes to construction permits. So that's about it's a significant difference, and I'll give you a rundown of what our process looks like here in Guyana. And in this snapshot, you can also see some of the areas where we have differences in our GDP per capita as well, with Trinidad at the time of the research that was available then, 17,000 US dollars GDP per capita, as opposed to Guyana at 5,500. So there is still a significant difference in income levels as well, which we expect to be able to minimize, at least get to global levels within the next 2 to 5 years, and then get to a much higher level. Your GM also mentioned the significant growth that is expected. It has now been tempered down somewhat to the 26% range. So we are expecting 2020 to end up with a GDP growth of around in the 20s. That is yet to be confirmed, but something to take a look at is a significant disparity still between income per person. We have significant strengths in Guyana, the geographic location, of course, an English-speaking population, tax rates on manufacturing and services. And for most of you who are here today, you would fall within the construction services category. Companies like that are taxed at a corporate tax rate of 25%. So that would be something for you to consider as well. We do fall within CARICOM, so you're able to benefit from duty-free access. And some of the weaknesses as well, we still have inadequate infrastructure, and you just saw on the video the level of infrastructure deficit that we have to overcome over the next couple of years. There are high tax rates on trading entities, at a level of 40%. The bureaucracy, which you'll get a little bit of a look, which has to be addressed, and we have heard positive talks about where we're heading with the reduction of bureaucracy and making the process much easier. But that is still a weakness that we do face. There are a lot of investment opportunities, as you saw in hydroelectric, construction, manufacturing, mining, and the like. The oil and gas discovery, which is now in production. We've been producing oil now since December 2019, and it's getting up to a level of full production because there were some corrections that need to be made. And then the threats, we do have border controversy on both sides of our neighbors, and with Suriname, there was talk about that moving along, and with Venezuela, that has gone to the International Court of Justice. We do face a continued level of migration. So, our population has been stuck at around 750,000. So our population is still relatively small. So we do expect high level of migration into Guyana, and maybe not necessarily from Guyanese. There is, some xenophobia as well, with many people in the country believing that, will Guyana really benefit from its resources? And I'll give you an example just now of the type of talks that are happening. For those of you who want to practice, and this was one of the questions that came in earlier, those of you who want to practice here as engineers or architects or surveyors, you would actually have to register with our revenue authority. Unless you are working for the government or a private company, because a private company would actually go through incorporation and pay its taxes in that manner. This is really a method, a measure geared at bringing all the individuals who are practicing these professions, these trades, into the tax net. There is a listing here, and you will get a copy of my presentation where you can actually see the tax practice certificates that are currently active for the period. I think the last period that was published was January to March. Interestingly enough, you'll see that there's just one architect on that list and a handful of surveyors, which tells me that the bulk of the people operating in this particular sector are not, following the prescribed guidelines. You can see that the fee here is 250,000 Guyana dollars for professions such as architects, and $250 is about $1,200 US for engineers. So the people would be functioning in the engineering capacity as private individuals. It's around $700 US, and persons who would be functioning in the surveying capacity, it's about let's say $350 US. The process of being able to register for a practice certificate includes filling out a application form at the Revenue Authority itself, and this particular fee is due every single year on or before February 28th. Now, there are some players in the market, and I've also included links that you'll see in the presentation where you can even see who, some of the other companies are, but some of the larger construction companies are listed, and some of the better known architects in our country are also listed here for you to take a look at what is available, either to collaborate or to have a better understanding of the market. In terms of construction permits, because both architecture, engineering, construction, you have to understand how our process currently works. Starts off with requesting a soil test. There is one lab that currently does that. You can also see the associated cost. Please remember that for an exchange rate, $1 is equivalent to about 215 Guyana dollars, for those of you who would like to do the conversions as well. Obtaining a topographical map would be the next step, could take up to 15 days. Requesting approval could be about 14 days. The main factor here is obtaining the building permit from the mayor and city council if you are operating in Georgetown. Outside of Georgetown, in the different regions, you would have to get this permit from the neighborhood democratic councils, so the councils that govern a group of villages. If it is for a 3-story building or a commercial building, it will still have to come to step number 5, which is obtaining the planning permits from the Central Housing and Planning Authority. You can see that 90 days have been set aside for that. At the moment, I know that the Central Housing and Planning Authority is having board meetings twice a month in order to move the processing along. But these number 4, number 5, and even number 6 and 7 can happen concurrently, which includes the fire permits. If you need any type of permissions as well from the Environmental Protection Agency, and this would be for wastewater treatment or noise pollution. The inspection takes about a day. If you need any, well, most of the inspections take around a day. Then getting the electrical and plumbing inspections, application, and even the inspection, because this is especially the electrical inspections are done by private inspectors. Normally, even the electrician that would have done the work is then the point of contact between yourself as a client and the electrical inspectorate, and they would handle the documentation there. And then the inspection approval upon completion of the project could take as much as 60 days for the fire service to receive the application, do the inspection, do their processing, and provide feedback. There's no charge for that. And then we still have a couple of other steps, the occupancy certificate. In Georgetown, there's a sewage system, so you do need permission from the water authority to actually be able to connect to that. And outside of Georgetown, there is a requirement to actually build septic tanks for properties. Now, I was also sent an early question for the level of activity that is happening. So you can see some of the headlines just in the past couple of days. This is in the past 4 days. There have been several dozen expressions of interest and complete proposal plans as well for various hotels. So we have a lot of branded hotels coming in: Sheraton, Best Western, Hilton. This is actually a snapshot of one of the hotels that is where there's plans to have this built very near to the shore base, a Hilton hotel very near to the shore base. We've also received several expressions of interest for a new harbor bridge connecting Region 4, which is where Georgetown is located, to Region 3, which is still one of the fastest growing regions in our country in terms of population. And there are also quite a lot of investment agreements coming in for agri-investment. And in Guyana right now, the amount of investors that are here are really, our officials are constantly busy dealing with the level of investors. And there was also a question on the type of sentiments that are playing out, and you can see on the last slide, oil companies must employ locals in front of foreigners. So we do have a local content policy which I believe Mr. Henry will talk a little bit more about, but that says that preference should be given to Guyanese companies, Guyanese nationals, where the capacity exists. So we also have a roadmap kind of laying out if you do want to get started yourself in Guyana. And some of the places to really look at, especially if you require incentives, would be places like Go Invest. I've listed all the websites, and in many places on the websites, you can get the full rundown of what the type of investments are, what the infrastructure is with these organizations. The Georgetown Chamber is the largest private sector organization in Guyana, so with about 400 members. I think in Guyana, just like in Trinidad, membership in these organizations is voluntary. So, you know, we don't, in Suriname, for example, where it's compulsory, every single business has to be a member. But the Georgetown Chamber has the largest membership, which includes many of the oil and gas companies. The Bureau of Standards is actually the custodian of all the standards in Guyana, so all the construction standards. And on their website, you're actually able to download, view all the standards, and then also download the various standards for the building codes, the electrical codes. I think the electrical codes are still in draft at the moment. The Revenue Authority can help you a lot with, you know, all the requirements for statutory requirements for the Revenue Authority. And I know that we have a question and answer segment at the end of the session. So any questions, I'll be happy to be able to assist. The Central Housing and Planning Authority, so any commercial buildings need to go through the Central Housing and Planning Authority. For procurement opportunities, we'll be hearing from the Public Procurement Commission, but there's also a private procurement website that captures quite a lot of the procurement opportunities in Guyana. For real estate, to get a sense of what's happening with our real estate industry in Guyana, you can take a look at properties.gy. And I did mention that, you know, we do publish the who's who. So if you want to see who some of the major companies are and what is happening in about 14 sectors of the economy, it would be good to take a review of the who's who. Support, again, is provided very similarly by these government agencies, but also by the private sector. And the Center for Local Business Development is one of those entities that is allowing both local and foreign companies to get registered with the center and to keep people really informed on what is happening in Guyana. And when it comes to services, the Guyana Manufacturing and Services Association is an organization that does support service-oriented organizations. Our own entity, we operate more like a private business support organization for the level of detail and handholding that may be needed. We did speak a little bit about partner selection, and it's very important that you look for complementarity, that these companies know what is happening within the market. Congruent culture is also very important. And to really meet each other and understand that, both parties really bring something to the table. For getting started in Guyana, joining a local business support organization would be a good first step. Submitting a Go Invest proposal if it's appropriate, if your particular entity can benefit from that. And employing locals, it's something that is very top of mind for everyone here in Guyana. That would be key, maybe even having a profit share reinvestment plan, because dividends and profits going out of the country are facing a withholding tax, but if they are left in Guyana, they could be used for reinvestment. You have seen the process, the time it takes for getting permits and all of that. And some of the feedback we are getting is that cash flow becomes an issue. So ensure that you have sufficient capital or cash flow to bridge any delays that could possibly happen. And make sure that you have good support in country. I think that is very important. To make sure that you don't face any unnecessary delays because you weren't aware of how the system operates in Guyana. And then I also strongly encourage you to, especially from a diplomatic perspective as well, to reciprocate the investment climate for Guyanese, because there are many stories of Guyanese companies wanting to get started in Trinidad and facing quite a lot of barriers. That is a bit of an overview. I hope that was helpful, and I look forward to answering any questions towards the end of the presentation. And you can feel free to reach out to us as well through the Export TT or the contact listed there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jigger, for your presentation and providing such clarity on the investment landscape and doing business in Guyana. Thank you so much. Now, participants, please note, as Dr. Jigger indicated, that we will have a final Q&A at the end of the session, so please note your questions. And please be aware that all questions will be posed through the chat module. And please make sure that you're posting your question to all. You can set them for individual persons, but please ensure that your questions are posted to all so that we can see it and respond to them. Yes, thank you so much. And now we move into our second presentation on understanding the procurement and tendering process in Guyana by Ms. Mandy Mickle of the Public Procurement Commission of Guyana. Now, Ms. Mickle has spent more than a decade helping organizations realize their goals and objectives through design and implementation of policies and procedure guidelines, management of resources, and assessment of control systems. Ms. Mickle has 14 years of work experience in both the public and private sector, and she spent the past 8 years working in the public sector at the Ministry of Finance, the Ministry of Legal Affairs, and most recently at the Public Procurement Commission, where she supports the commission. Now, Ms. Mickle supports the commission in executing its constitutional responsibility to monitor public procurement and design robust policies and procedures aimed at ensuring efficient and effective execution of public procurement. Ms. Mickle has an IMBA with a concentration in finance from the Arthur Lockjack Graduate School of Business, is a member of the ACCA, and is a certified internal auditor. I give you Ms. Mickle. Ms. Mickle? All right, she's coming in with us.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. Just bear with me while I try to share my presentation. Great. Thank you for that warm introduction, and thank you to Action Invest Caribbean Inc. for inviting the Public Procurement Commission for making a presentation this morning. We at the Commission always welcome the opportunity to be able to support and work with our stakeholders, so I am more than happy to be here this morning and to deliver this presentation. I also want to say congratulations on this pre-mission seminar and launch, and best wishes to the actual trade mission that will come early next year. In my presentation this morning, I'm going to take you through the legislative framework of public procurement. I'm also going to explore with you the public procurement system, the public procurement process. I'm also going to leave some tips on tendering. We're going to look at the review procedures as well as the debarment procedures. So now let's look at the legislative framework. Guyana, like most countries around the world, conduct procurement within the confines of the law. And these are the Procurement Act of 2003 and all its subsequent amendments, the procurement regulations, established procedures, and policy. Now, public procurement is also regulated by the Constitution of Guyana, which gave birth to the organization I'm representing this morning. So it's important for everyone to know that public procurement is grounded in the law. Every aspect of public procurement is covered in some one of the procedure documents or the legislation. So there is always an opportunity for legal recourse. And when we get to the review and the debarment aspect, you'll understand more of what I'm referring to. So the public procurement system. The system encompasses the legislative framework I would have shown you before, as well as several institutional establishments. The Public Procurement Commission is one. We are regarded as the regulators of public procurement. We are mandated via the Constitution to regulate, to monitor, to review public procurement to ensure that it is conducted in keeping with all the existing laws, regulation, and policies. Then there is the National Procurement and Tender Administration. This is the National Administrator of Public Procurement. We have the internal tender boards, which are internal administrators that you would find within this respective entities. Then we have the pool of evaluators who are oftentimes appointed by the National Tender Board or the internal tender boards to evaluate tenders. And then we have the procuring entity. These are the entities that have the need and would be executing procurement opportunities. And of course, the suppliers and contractors. All together form the public procurement system, and it's guided by policies, procedures, and the legislation as mentioned before. So let's jump into the public procurement process. The first stage of the process, and it's a 4-stage, or we bottle it into a 4-stage process. The first stage is procurement planning. Here, procuring entities, and these entities are, for example, the ministries, the Regional Democratic Council, statutory bodies, constitutional bodies, state-owned enterprises, are regarded as procuring entities. So procuring entities will identify their need, they will assess the market for prospective bidders, suppliers, contractors, and they will also determine the appropriate methodology of procurement to be used. This is oftentimes done at the point of budgeting, which happens the year before or towards the early bit of the year. It's also important to note that as of last year, the Procurement Act was amended to say to procuring entities that when they prepare their procurement plans, they're to submit their procurement plans to the Public Procurement Commission. In the conduct of our work, we will review the plans, but more importantly, we're now working with procuring entities to submit the plans to us, for us to then post it to our website. That will benefit prospective suppliers and contractors because you would have the opportunity to see procurement opportunities that are upcoming. I know the speaker before me mentioned that there is a website that's sort of a private website that sort of publish all procurement activities that are ongoing or that has just launched. But what we're aiming to do at the Commission is to put plans out that prospective buyers, bidders, suppliers, contractors can see that are upcoming, that are a few months ahead or an entire year ahead. And so they can prep themselves and think about whether they want to bid for any of the activities that are posted. So in determining the appropriate procurement methodology, the law gave 6 methodology, and based on these procurement methods, procurement procedures or particular procurement procedures will be executed. So there is the open tendering, which is a method I think most suppliers and contractors are familiar with. This method is where you would see ads being published in the papers, inviting bidders, inviting proposals, etc. And then there's a restricted tendering. Here, a procuring entity would write selective group of suppliers and contractors and invite them to tender. This you will not see in the newspapers or published anyway, but they would select a specific group based on their market research and their identification of specific skill sets that are there and companies that exist, and then they would write those companies. And then the third method is single sourcing. Here, a procuring entity would go directly to one supplier. And of course, the law gave specific parameters under which this method can be used. For example, if you're the sole distributor or you have the sole rights for a specific good, then a procuring entity will have to direct their procurement to that particular company only. And then there is the request for quotation and request for proposal. These are done similar to single sourcing. However, instead of writing one or approaching one bidder, a procuring entity may approach 6, or they may approach 3, or they may approach 4. for those two methods. And then there's the community participation method, which is focused on building local capacity, particularly in the regions, in the hinterland regions. The second stage is the procurement execution. Here, if we assume that a procuring entity has selected the open tendering methodology, you would see an ad published in the papers, inviting bidders, expression of interest, request for proposal, or even for pre-qualification. Pre-qualification is an opportunity afforded to bidders and suppliers and contractors to submit a certain requisite qualifications to say that they have the appropriate capacity to bid in the future for a particular project. And so pre-qualification is like tendering, but of course it's not to a particular activity, but is to evaluate the submission and to keep it on file in the event that procurement opportunity presents itself. The procuring entity can then simply approach the pool of pre-qualified suppliers and contractors. Oftentimes in the requests, information to purchase, for example, the tender document is included in the publication. Here you may see an ad that will say, you can purchase the tender document from X ministry at this location. Bidders can also, at the point of submitting or even purchasing the tender document, they can seek clarification on any area of the solicitation document from the particular entity. This can also be facilitated in what we call pre-bid meetings or any time before the bidding document. And this step is particularly important because oftentimes as the regulator, what we've seen is bidders not being responsive for a particular procurement project because they might not necessarily understood something in the tender document, and so they were not able to meet that requirement. And so it's important to seek clarification on any area from the entity that is launching the procurement. And another important step is to do site visit, particularly for the construction projects, because you want to make sure you would have considered all factors when you're submitting your bid. The third stage is the actual bidding. I mentioned a little bit just now how important it is to understand the tender document, to read it, to assess every area. So the document will include the nature of procurement, whether it is the construction of a bridge, the construction of a school, architectural drawings, whatever. It will say the nature of the procurement. It will also include the technical specifications, and bidders would want to pay keen attention to this. It will include contractual terms, the bidder's qualification requirements, details to a site visit or a pre-bid conference, which you would also want to take advantage to, instructions for the preparation and submission of tenders, how to show your prices and currencies, and of course, it will also include the criteria and the methodology for evaluation of tenders. And this is very, very important. Oftentimes we have seen bidders believe because they have the lowest bid price, then it means that they should have been awarded a contract. And that's not necessarily the case. But satisfying all the criteria in the evaluation stage is what is most important. It will also include, and for the suppliers or the contractors overseas, you want to focus on whether the tender document have any preferences for domestic goods and works. It will also include, in some cases, the grouping of lots and how that can be done, whether alternatives are accepted. It will also say the validity of tender security and tender performance and any other securities required while bidding. Of course, it will include conflict of interest restrictions and any anti-fraud and corruption rules. And of course, it will include procedures of how you can do an administrative review, or what we call a bid protest. So it will include procedures on that, and I will touch a little bit on that towards the end of my presentation. The bidding stage continues. So tenders should be submitted in writing. It should be signed and in a seal envelope, and the tender document itself will specify what you should put on the outside. And this is also important because if your tenders aren't properly labeled, they may not be opened by the relevant authority. The tenders received after a deadline will not be considered. They will not be opened, they would simply be returned. And so again, you want to pay attention to the ad that you would have seen in the papers and the date for the submission of tenders, because no tender submitted after that date will be accepted. No pre-qualification or tender documents shall permit submission either by hand, and it will say this, or whether you can mail it in, whatever methodology the authority will accept in the submission, the documents will say this. And then also another important area, bidders, and according to the law, bidders and suppliers are permitted to attend what we call tender opening meetings. At these meetings is when the respective administrator, whether it is MPTAB, the national, or whether it is internal, they would hold a meeting where all the tenders submitted will be open. This is a public meeting. Bidders can come or send representative. At this meeting, what usually happens, they would open up each tender and then they will announce the name of the bidder, the bid price at minimum, whether an NIS, national insurance certificate was submitted, or whether a tax certificate, tax compliance certificate was submitted. And so bidders can walk away at the end of this meeting understanding the preliminaries, whether they were included in their package and what other bidders would have bid in terms of price. So let's move on to the evaluation stage, which is the fourth stage, and award. Now, the national board, MPTAB, as well as the internal board, depending on the level that the procurement is being launched, would appoint an evaluation committee. So there exists a pool of evaluators within the public procurement system. And depending on the particular project, an evaluation committee will be selected with a minimum of 3 persons. They will have the necessary skills and competencies required to evaluate bids for the particular project. So once this happens, the evaluation committee will conduct what we regard as a preliminary examination of the bids. This is where they will ascertain whether the bids have been submitted and it meets the statutory requirements. This is whether you have your GRA compliance, whether you have your NIS compliance, or whether you have a valid business registration. This is important. And I know big companies would have these things in place, but oftentimes they expire and you don't know. So it's important to pay attention to that, because if any of the statutory documents are not in good standing, you're automatically disqualified from even progressing onto the substantive evaluation. And this is where the evaluation committee will determine that you would have met all the evaluation criteria necessary. So once they would have, and this is not considering cost yet, this is not considering bid price yet, they will evaluate whether you have met all the technical criteria. And once you have met the technical criteria, you will then advance to the final stage, which is an assessment of the price. Based on that, the evaluation committee will then recommend to the administrators, whether it's MPTAB or it's the internal board, the bidder that they regard to be the lowest responsive bidder. Now, the lowest responsive bidder is the bidder who would have satisfied all criteria and have the lowest bid price. When this happened, the tender board will issue an award letter to the procuring entity indicating the successful bidder. The entity will then issue an acceptance letter to the bidder who have been successful, and then they would also notify the unsuccessful bidder. Bear in mind, from the point of the tender opening, this is the day that your bids are to be submitted. From that point, all the way up to the point of an acceptance letter being issued to the successful bidder and notification being served to the unsuccessful bidder, it may take as much as 3 weeks to 4 weeks. If there are any issues when an evaluation is being done, if the evaluation committee needs clarification on anything, if they need third-party confirmation, if they need to write the bank, those type of things may prolong an evaluation. In law, the evaluation must be conducted within 14 days from the time the bids are submitted to the evaluation committee. And so, from the time the opening happens, the administrators will always aspire to have those bids transmitted promptly to the evaluation committee so the evaluation can commence. And so the likely period you're looking at between the submission of your bids and notification of an award of a successful bidder and the unsuccessful bidder may likely be minimum 3 weeks. This is important to note because oftentimes, only yesterday, in fact, I've received a call, even though we're the regulators and we're independent of the process, oftentimes bidders may reach out to us and find out how it's taking so long for them to hear something. So if you understand, it takes about 3 weeks. It can take more than 3 weeks depending on any difficulties the evaluation committee may have faced when they're doing the evaluation. Nevertheless, after the notification of successful and unsuccessful bidders, a contract is signed between the bidder and the procuring entity. But before that contract is signed, unsuccessful bidders, and I will discuss this in the review aspect, have the opportunity to protest the bid. And we'll look at that a little bit later. The contract award information is then published to MPTAB's website. So let's look at the review process now. Any bidder whose tender or proposal have been rejected reserves the right to submit a written protest to the procuring entity. But when you submit this protest, it must pertain to the tendering, pre-qualification, or the procurement methodology. So, and this must happen within 5 days following the publication of the contract award decision. Now, if the protest is not received by the procuring entity within 5 business days from the date, if the procuring entity does not conduct their review, because in law, any bidder or supplier have the opportunity to protest the bid, to say, listen, we thought that we should have been awarded this contract. And that must be done within 5 days of the publication of the contract award decision. Now, the procuring entity have the opportunity again in law to review the protests, to review the process, and to respond to the tenderer. Now, if they don't do that, then the tenderer can submit that request to the commission. When we get such a request, the commission then notifies the procuring entity who is mandated to then send us all the records. We have a team that would then review the entire process, review all the records, and then during this time, of course, the final contract award is suspended. After we would have conducted our review, the commission will then make a decision as to whether the outcome of the procurement process was done according to the law and whether the lowest responsive bidder was in fact successful. The commission's decision following the review is final and immediately binding upon the procuring entity. Let's talk about debarment procedures now. because this is important to any bidder. Debarment is essentially a suspension from participating in public procurement, and it can be for as minimum as 1 year or as much as 10 years. So there are several grounds for debarment catered for in law. If it is proven that the supplier or the contractor committed one or more of the offenses listed in the regulation itself, then, and some of these offenses, are if you commit a serious violation of the fair employment laws like the EPA or the NIS or labor laws or Occupational Health and Safety Acts, that constitutes grounds for debarment. If you breach a procurement contract, you might have had a contract awarded to you and you may not satisfy a specific provision within the contract, that's grounds for debarment. False information being supplied in the tendering process is also grounds for debarment. And remember, I mentioned at a few slides up that entities want to pay attention to their NIS, GRA compliance or their business registration, because the last thing you want to do is to submit one of those statutory documents that have expired. You know, they may appear to be a false submission of information in some regard, and a procuring entity may submit a request for you to be debarred. So you want to pay attention to that. And of course, if you're debarred in any other jurisdiction, in Trinidad and Tobago, any other country within the Caribbean or international, or you're debarred by any one of these international donor agencies, then the Commission will automatically debar you from participating in public procurement in Guyana. So let's look at the procedure. A procuring entity or anyone can submit to us a proposal for debarment. In that proposal, they are expected to name the bidder, identify or provide any evidence they want to support that proposal. And that's important. You just can't write us a letter and say, debar John Doe. You know, they must have sufficient evidence to support your proposal. We would assess that evidence or information provided, and if the Commission feels that debarment may be contemplated, then the Commission will inform the supplier or the contractor in writing, and the Commission will give the contractor an opportunity to write or to make a written representation and request a hearing. In this hearing, the Commission will, or is mandated by law to conduct the hearing within 10 days of the request. Contractors are given the opportunity to work with counsel, as well as any evidence or any representation they feel necessary to dispel the proposal for debarment. The Commission will then, following the adjudication process, make a decision on the proposed debarment, and this usually happens within 60 days of the notice.
I think, oh, there we go.
Not every tender issues of interest to your company. So making a decision to bid should be based on all factors in mind. What are some of those things? Do you now, oftentimes large and high value tenders require significant investment in not only time, but personnel, facilities, and other resources. And so an assessment of where you are in terms of this capacity, in terms of ongoing projects, is also important, because another factor that the evaluation committee would assess is whether you have the capacity to complete the particular project, bearing in mind any ongoing projects that you might have had. And then you also want to consider, are we in the position to win the tender? Bear in mind, all criteria must be satisfied, And then your bid price must be competitive. So this will seek to ascertain whether the company has a competitive advantage in the delivery of goods, service, or construction. Do you have the required machinery, technical personnel, experience dealing with similar jobs? Can you outsource? These are the things you want to think about. And most importantly, are we in compliance with all statutory requirements? Never take for granted that your NIS, your GRA, your business registration is valid. You always want to make sure these documents, and I can't stress this enough because oftentimes we see situations where large companies who would have been bidding and being awarded government contracts and constructing stuff all over the place lose out on winning a tender. And when you look, the GRA certificate is not valid or the NIS certificate is not valid. And maybe the time it took for them to renew those certificates would have run out. And so they probably decide just to submit the tender, assuming we will not notice, but they do. And so it is important for companies to make sure they're always in compliance with these statutory requirements. And with that, I've come to the end of my presentation. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, I remember the moderator saying it can be facilitated at the end of all the presentations, but for more information on what touched, sorry.
Actually, we will entertain a brief Q&A specific to your presentation, just in case you may have to leave us before the end. We will open the floor for questions. So participants, should you have anything you need to clarify or any other information you need, please type your questions in the chat box. Just in case, if you open the chat at the bottom of the two, right where your text would come up, you would see that either to a specific person or to everyone. Please ensure that next to the two, you are directing your questions to everyone so we can all see the questions. Yeah?
Okay.
Now is the time.
Right. So for more information, feel free to contact the Public Procurement Commission, and our information is there. And we will be more than welcome to provide any information, insights, and support all prospective bidders and contractors. Thank you.
Any questions? This is the time. I'll give us just a couple seconds in case anyone is typing and there are questions to come. But failing that, Ms. Nichols, if you can stay on till the end, that will be helpful, just in case the questions may come up as we continue. If you can stay till the end, that would be helpful. But if not, we fully understand. So questions, anyone? Going once, going twice. But it was quite a comprehensive presentation. So perhaps everyone is clear. Give me a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. No? Okay, I will assume that everything is clear and that should, of course, as we continue, should you have questions, please put them in the chat anyway. We will get to them. And once Ms. Mickle is around, we will refer those questions to her. But at this time, we will move ahead. So thank you again, Ms. Mickle, for such a comprehensive presentation. Clearly, everything is clear and everyone understands the process within Guyana. So thank you again. And we will now move on to Mr. Patrick Henry from the Center of Local Business Development in Guyana, who will present on Guyana's upcoming planning and civil work projects for 2020-2022. Now a little bit about Mr. Henry. Mr. Patrick Henry is the director of the Center for Local Business Development. Now through his efforts, he has had sustained results in moving hundreds of suppliers through a pioneering program that resulted in them winning work and building long-term capacity to support this nascent sector. Patrick previously served as a senior executive and succeeded in bringing agricultural investment from conception to raising capital into production, while simultaneously building long-term supply chains via relationships and corporate systems. I hand you over to Mr. Patrick Henry. Mr. Henry.
Thank you. Let me get my presentation up and we'll get started.
Wonderful.
All right. Hello, everybody. Good morning. I'm with the Center for Local Business Development in Guyana. The center is run by a company called DAI Global. I work with DAI Global and funded by ExxonMobil and the co-venture partners, Hess and CNOC, to help Guyanese businesses broadly become more competitive and specifically to improve their ability to get in the supply chain for ExxonMobil and their prime contractors. So we work very broadly with companies across the economy, and we work very specifically with companies getting them into the oil and gas supply chain. So what I'm going to do is talk a bit about the center's outward-facing products that can help businesses that are coming to Guyana thinking to invest. The real focus of the center is helping Guyanese businesses. In the case of foreign direct investment, it's helping them form smart partnerships, helping them understand that a partnership should be a transfer of skills and knowledge, and that those businesses are capable of doing that. There are a number of partnerships that have occurred in Guyana, from formal joint ventures all the way through to authorized distributorships and dealerships, so that the idea of finding a partner in Guyana to help navigate working in Guyana is a way that the center believes helps develop local content, helps international companies learn how to operate, and helps them operate more successfully in Guyana. The center started out in 2017. Since 2017 to 2020, we've shifted in a lot of our work. We do provide a lot of services for Guyanese businesses. What I'm really going to focus on are the services that can be of use to folks at Export TT. We're a neutral information space. As the center, we hold a number of events throughout the year. Right now, the center is operating virtually because of COVID-19, so the events are on Zoom or WebEx, and we get the ExxonMobil and its prime contractors in front of businesses to help them understand procurement opportunities that are going to happen in Guyana for the oil and gas sector specifically. We've held a large supplier forum over the course of 2018. We'll hold another supplier forum in coming months, most likely virtually because of COVID-19, that allows Guyanese businesses and their partners to understand opportunities that are upcoming in the oil and gas sector. The center has a supplier registration portal. I recommend that all the companies on this call go to our website and register in the supplier registration portal. That'll give you updates on procurements and information about the oil and gas sector. We have a mobile app that you can get in Google Play or the App Store. It allows you to get that information in the palm of your hands. We release regularly, about once a quarter, a center newsletter and the center magazine twice a year that really updates external audiences to the oil and gas sector in Guyana. We have about 3,000 Guyanese companies registered in our supplier registration portal, and about another 1,200, 1,400 international companies, and those span everything from the Caribbean to around the world, of companies that are operating or attempting to work in the oil and gas sector in Guyana. And so it's a good source of information that you can get for your company and as you're making business decisions. I just wanted to quickly go through what the center does, how the center works. Again, you can go to our website. All the information's there. You can call the center. You can send us an email or WhatsApp and ask about that. You know, the oil and gas sector in Guyana has 3 approved projects at this stage. LISA 1, LISA 2, and Payara. There's a lot of activity going on around those, a lot of infrastructure being built, a lot of companies coming in to work and service the sector. It's a really exciting time for Guyanese businesses and a great deal of opportunity for businesses from Trinidad or elsewhere to make smart partnerships and really work with Guyanese companies. I'll stop there and take any questions.
Thank you so much for that presentation and for sharing with us this morning. This is information that is key for our service suppliers to understand the immediate opportunities that exist within the Guyanese market. We will open the floor for a Q&A. Again, please type your questions in the chat and ensure that your questions are going to everyone. I will give you some time to have your questions pop up again. Well, let's see if there are questions.
I'm going to say it was so good there were no questions. How about that?
So good and so clear, everyone.
Exactly, it's like that.
I will give us a couple more seconds, and if not, I will take that as an indicator that indeed Patrick was clear and everyone understands the playing field going forward. And again, should any questions arise going forward, still feel free to drop them in the chat. If Mr. Henry is not able to stay on with us, we can email them to him later and pursue those, but now is the time. So we'll just give you guys a couple seconds to see if anything is coming, and if not, I will. Oh, wonderful. Okay, we have from Michael Mohammed. Oh, okay. Michael Mohammed is asking if the presentations will be shared. Are you able to share your presentation? Mr. Henry, are you willing?
Yes, we can.
Okay, wonderful. We will email those to the participants after. Wonderful. And this is oil and gas related only, yes?
Oil and gas related for procurement opportunities, but we broadly work a lot of international companies that come in, stop through the center to find out information on companies that they might contact across the economy. So our supplier registration portal has companies from across the Guyanese economy. So if people are looking for real estate agents or partners in construction projects, they'll stop by. We'll provide them a list of the companies that are in our portal, and they can reach out and contact those companies.
Thank you so much for that. I'm seeing another question. Does Export TT assist with finding a partner for Trinidad contractors to work with in Guyana? Well, if you are a part of our mission, just going to Guyana, we do business-to-business matchmaking, and so those opportunities are definitely available there. Outside of that, in terms of our research facilities, we can match you with businesses that may be in line with that, but I'm seeing more specifically architecture and design. Again, that falls within the category, so once you do sign on to come with us on our mission to Guyana, we will do that work in January 2021. So it's coming soon. So please speak with us further on that, and that will be a component of being a part of the mission. Yeah? Any others? Any other burning or even warm questions? Now is the time. I will give us a couple more seconds to wait and see, and if not, oh, okay. Does the Center for the Local Business Development assist with finding local partners for engineering services?
Sure. What we would do is we would send you a list of the companies that have registered in our portal for engineering services. And then it would be up to the company to go talk to those partners to do due diligence. We're not recommending anyone. We're just providing all the Guyanese companies an equal opportunity to meet a potential foreign partner.
Wonderful. I'm sure that clarifies. Any others? Any others? I should think that may be all. And we will have another Q&A at the end to wrap. So if anything comes up along the way, as I say, drop them in the chat and we will address those at the end. I'm not sure if Mr. Henry is able to stay on with us, but again, if anything comes that's up his alley, we can communicate that afterward. Yes? So this time, I thank you so much, Mr. Henry, for your time and sharing this information with us and with our exporters. And so, yeah, thank you so much. And
Right,
we will be in touch with
Have a good day, everybody.
Wonderful. Right, so thank you again for the people who did ask questions. I hope you got the clarification that you needed. And now we will move to our final presenter, Mr. Nicholas Boye-Degu. Mr. Nicholas Boye-Degu returned to Guyana from Washington, D.C. to join his family business in 2010, where he had worked, as in the U.S., with Wells Fargo Bank as a mortgage-backed securities analyst and for Valuation Services, Inc. as an associate, the former being one of the largest banks in North America and the latter a small accounting and investment firm. Nicholas is the chairman of the Private Sector Commission and the president of the Georgetown Chamber of Commerce and Industry, currently as a director of National Hardware Limited Group of Companies and Royal Castle Guyana, Inc., where he is responsible for the overall corporate strategy. He's also a founder of Guyana Oil and Gas Support Services, Inc., and a welding and fabrication startup in the Guyanese oil and gas industry. Nicholas holds a BA in economics from the University of Virginia in Charlottesville, as well as a dual master's degree in business and finance from the University of Maryland in College Park. I will hand you over to Mr. Boye, who's having a busy presentation.
And I would like to say thank you to the organizers for this virtual trade mission for allowing me the chance to say a few words. So thank you to Export TT and to the local organizers who are helping Export TT prepare this. My name is Nicholas Boyer. I am the chairman of the Private Sector Commission of Guyana, as well as the president of the Georgetown Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Today, I would like to talk a little bit about the partnerships needed between Guyana and Trinidad to develop our country. As Guyana's economy grows, the infrastructure sector is set to advance drastically as we embark upon oil production. Infrastructure development is directly linked to economic and social resilience, since it creates an opportunity for foreign investments, trade, employment, and education. With Guyana currently experiencing an infrastructure deficit, it is critical for measures to be put in place that raises investment levels related to infrastructure services in order to favor inclusive, sustainable development. Further, as the economy grows, there is an absolute need for basic infrastructure to be expanded and elevated to meet international standards. Public-private partnerships and bilateral relationships play a significant role in making the best use of financial and technical resources to provide improved infrastructure. The government of Guyana has prioritized several transformative infrastructure efforts that surround transport, utilities, sea and river defense, drainage, new hospitals, and schools. Guyana and Trinidad have engaged in strategic discussions as it relates to working together, as well as market access. With the need for critical investment, it is the hope that our business service organizations are able to work together and help to foster the relationship so that we can boost competitiveness both within our countries and regionally, so that we can provide for inclusive development. Within our two countries' bilateral relationship, partnerships are a vital component in order to build capacity. Indeed, the oil and gas industry itself will necessitate an immediate demand for infrastructure so that service companies can perform work in country. Therefore, Trinidadian companies should consider various methods of partnership with Guyanese companies Those methods can include joint ventureships, co-investment, licensing arrangements, and technology transfer that allow Trinidadian companies to help build and increase the capacity of their Guyanese counterparts and to benefit from the opportunities that are available in Guyana. We are, after all, CARICOM, Cicerone, and veteran. So I do hope that the mission is successful. I hope that you all engage in lots of market research and find potential partners who can help you grow your businesses as you seek to export to Guyana. And with that, I'd like to thank the organizers again for allowing me to say these few words.
Thank you so much to Mr. Boyer for sharing that information with our services exporters. And at this time, we will have, as I warned, our second poll, so it'll appear on your screen shortly. Please indicate your interest in being a part of our virtual trade mission to Guyana in 2021. Okay. Wonderful, the responses are rolling in. And we leave the poll up for 15 more seconds and get everyone a chance to weigh in. And then we will move on. See, last opportunity, click, click, click. Okay, we will end it there. Thanks so much for your responses. A second, let me shift back the screen. That will not shift. Do bear with. Right, at this time, I would like to reopen the floor for any other questions you may have for Dr. Durga, who spoke earlier, for Ms. Mickle, or if Mr. Henry is still on. I am not sure, I can't quite see. But now is the opportunity to ask any of your lingering questions, any questions from earlier. I know we've had a bit of a shy audience this morning, but now is the time. Please, any questions that you may have, put them in the chat and they will be attended to.
I think in the meantime, as those come in, I did have the ones that were sent by email, and someone was asking
Wonderful.
about the way clients view architects. And I got in contact with several architects here, and the feedback that I got is that most clients don't understand the value an architect brings to the table until they actually have a consultation. And most people actually get their house plans done using a draftsman who is attached to an NDC. So when they go to make the application, in many cases, the NDC recommends someone to them. And another piece of feedback I also got is that it's more common for either developers or homeowners who have investments of about $500,000 to $1 million US and above to seek out the services of an architect. Generally below $500,000 US, they use the draftsman. In terms of an organization, there have been attempts in the past to set up an organization, but there are just a handful of very established architects in Guyana. And two of the architects actually indicated that they are members of RIBA, which is the Royal Institute of British Architects. But at the moment, the local ones are not very active. And I did send in my presentation the few architects who are very recognized with their contact information if anyone wants to get on to them. And yeah, I believe that would answer those questions that came in by email.
Thank you so much for those responses. Again, the floor is open to anyone who has any lingering questions. Please type them and they'll be responded to. I'll give you guys a few minutes.
Hi, good morning, Vishnu. I just have a question from Export TT here. The firms that you have listed as architecture firms, are those local Guyanese architects, or are those foreign firms based in Guyana?
Those are mainly local firms. I think they're all local firms.
Thanks, Vishnu.
We do have some Trinidadian and Barbadian firms operating here from time to time, especially when they are working here for multinational companies or even Caribbean companies. So they would come in and work here from time to time, but generally whichever contractor is building here would then take the paperwork and use it for the submissions to the various Guyanese entities.
We have a question from Kendall Morley. Says, we do welding and fabrication of oil and gas piping in Trinidad. We would prefer to find a partner in Guyana who would want us to fabricate in Trinidad and just have the partner install in Guyana. Can we get any such list of contractors in Guyana, if any, who would be interested in such a partnership? The trade mission is, yes, always do that.
This would be a good question for Patrick, because in his database, he may see who's already indicated such interest. There are a few companies here now setting up such operations here in Guyana. But we can always do the research and find out if there is a partner who would be interested in mainly installation. Yeah, but I am aware that there are a few companies who are actually setting up here their base to be able to do the manufacturing here as well. Right, so this is also a question I would recommend we also send to Patrick. I don't see him on the call, but I think that
Patrick has left us, yes.
Patrick would be able to tell us if there are already any existing companies here who would be interested in that.
And of course, our trade mission can also assist.
Yes, definitely.
With making those connections. Let's move on to the next from B. Mohammed. What are the legal requirements and who is the regulatory body for performing engineering designs in Guyana? For example, in Trinidad, engineering drawings and calculations are to be performed by engineers registered with the Board of Engineering of Trinidad and Tobago.
Yeah, so the actual building codes are managed by the Bureau of Standards, and they are then enforced by the Central Housing and Planning Authority. It is expected that the engineers, and we see this mainly happening from the architect's perspective. So the companies that operate here, for example, Dean's Architects, they have their engineering team in-house that also provide all the engineering drawings with the strength of the materials and everything else, which is then submitted through the process, through the Central Housing and Planning Authority, and then they will do the review and either approve, disapprove, make recommendations. And it is not as organized as yet as the way it is in Trinidad. And many of the requirements that exist in Trinidad, I would say we have them, especially in the code, but the enforcement of the code is where we need to develop a lot of capacity in Guyana.
Thank you for that. Last question that I see here. Are there any plans to make business registration a simpler process in Guyana?
There is talk about a single window where many of the current application processes that still have to be done by running from one office to another office will come to a resolution. I recall this project, having been in the pipeline for nearly 10 years. So in my opinion, it's something that is badly needed, where you can be at your location, wherever, and be able to get your company registered. But at the moment, that's not possible as yet. For sole proprietors, you still need to be able to visit the registry. And for incorporated companies, generally, a lawyer locally is able to help you through the process and by FedExing documents up and down as well. So it's not really needed for you to be here if you're considering incorporation. But yes, I know that the project has been on the table for a long time to simplify the process and to make it more digital. But in the meantime, for incorporation, you would have to work through a lawyer in Guyana. And the costs for that, just in case you're interested, are around 2,000 US, which includes the legal fees and the court fees as well.
Thank you so much, Dr. Digger. Any last questions from our audience? I will give a few seconds in case any.
And just for the
Dr. Digger?
Yeah, just for the mission as well. I know that, you know, for the participants who are joining, they will fill out their form and they will indicate exactly the type of collaborations or partners or distributors that they're looking for, and then the team will focus in on making sure that we have such matches so that when they speak, they'll be able to determine if this is something to their liking.
And we have another question from Cheryl Adams. Are architects and engineers required to be registered with any professional bodies in Guyana? Will Trinidad and Tobago registration be sufficient?
Right, so we do have the Guyana Association of Professional Engineers, and that is relatively active, and they are constantly pushing to make sure that more and more of the engineering fraternity falls within that ambit and that there is some amount of regulation. So that is the organization that is currently active when it comes to engineers, and I would have to do some research to confirm if the registration from Trinidad and Tobago will be acceptable. But that's information that I can pass on to you for you to distribute to the members.
Wonderful, thanks for that. That will be helpful information to provide. Any last ones? This is the moment. And if not, all right, well, I will assume that those are the questions that we have today. Again, if anything occurs later, please communicate them with us. Email Ms. Douglas Paul and she can do the legwork to get that information for you. So thank you again so much, Dr. Digger, for being with us this morning and assisting us with this session and providing this information, these insights into doing business in Guyana. This is truly, truly helpful for our service suppliers to understand the nature of accessing the Guyanese market. At this time, I will now welcome Ms. Lisa Douglas Paul to deliver closing remarks. You should be familiar with Ms. Douglas Paul. She is a business advisor within the Services Export Unit, and she is responsible for putting this morning's session together. I hand you over to Ms. Douglas Paul.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Ladies and gentlemen, this brings us to the end of a very informative session. Through this session, we sought to help you understand the regulatory environment for architecture, construction, and engineering services in the Guyanese market. After viewing today's presentations, I'm confident that we have left here today with a better understanding of the opportunities in the Guyanese market in 2021 and beyond. I'd like to thank Vishnu for his presentation today and for helping shape the content you enjoyed here today through this session. Vishnu and his team in Action Invest Caribbean Inc. have been hired as the consultancy firm to coordinate the B2B meetings for our upcoming trade mission in January 19th and 20th, 2021. So thank you, Vishnu, for coordinating much of what we have enjoyed here today. And thank you for your insightful presentation and for answering many of the questions posted by our participants. I'd like to thank Mr. Patrick Henry, Ms. Mandy Mickle, and of course, Mr. Nicholas Boyer for their presentations. It was very informative, and I think it touched on a lot of the gray areas that our participants have had and the questions they've been posing to us over the past few weeks. Of course, many of you may have communicated with me via telephone or via email, so it must be nice to put a face to the name and the voice. I'm very, very happy and pleased to be part of this session and part of this project. I just want to take this moment to reiterate the sentiment expressed by our general manager this morning, that this is just the beginning.
we have really intensified our efforts towards building the export capacity and capability of the sector, and really helping you all with the opportunities, and not only highlighting them, but helping you achieve them. So please make us your friends, your bosom buddies. We are here to help. My colleague Patty Mohan Thompson, she will be the point person on the project going forward. So her email is pmohan-thompson@exportt.co.tt, and you could also contact her at 623-5507 extension 7926. Registration for the upcoming trade mission to Guyana will be ongoing until December the 18th. So please engage us, send us your emails, send us your questions, and we will be sure to answer them and hopefully register you to become part of this new journey with your company, whether you're registered there already or whether you have new interests that you'd like to pursue. I'd like to take this time to also let you know that some of you may have answered the survey about the opportunities in the British Virgin Islands. We are confirming in this session that we will be embarking on a market research mission to the British Virgin Islands. So through this mission to the BVI, we will not be coordinating B2B meetings, but it's more of a fact-finding effort to see and understand the opportunities there. And then we'll have a release seminar where we'll take all the information that we've gathered and put it out there in the public for you to take and inform your business plans going forward. So it's really, really critical that you answer the poll that we're about to post in the session right now, and let us know if you're interested in this market so we can get in touch with you, get your questions. Again, it's really not any commitment, it's just to let us know. I mean, the more that you know, the better for your company, especially in these challenging or interesting times. My email, just to remind everyone, is ldouglas-paul@exportt.co.tt, and you can also call me at 623-5507 extension 7933. I would finally like to thank you all for joining us today and for meeting with me and chatting with me and meeting with our team over the past few weeks. I would like to thank the president and the team at APET, the TTIA and the TTCA for taking the time to chat with us. Much of what you shared has and will continue to be incorporated in our efforts, and we hope to continue to work with your organizations towards bettering and enhancing opportunities for your memberships. And I see I have about 23 persons to contact after this call with respect to, after the session with respect to the BVI. So thank you all for answering the poll. I'll be in touch with you shortly. And this brings us to the end of this session. I wish you all an enjoyable day, and we're in this together. So I look forward to hearing from you. Thanks, Vishnu.
Welcome, thank you.
Okay, take care, guys. Have a great day.